Hello and welcome back to Ray's Gaming Videos and more Monster Hunter Wilds talk. Today though, we have a big one. The beta is right around the corner. A lot of people are going to get to try the game for the first time. So it's a big time. What are you going to play? What weapon is going to be your main? What other stuff are you going to try while you have the chance? I would recommend you experiment because this is going to be a great time. We're all going to get this set of hope weapons. We're not going to have to worry about farming materials, upgrading. So yeah, really, it's a perfect time to try your main and other stuff you might be interested in before the full release. So with that in mind, I'm going to present you with basically some information, the core concept of every weapon, and some of the stuff that's changed in Wilds that's so exciting that, will encourage you to try them if you're unaware of it. So let's just jump in straight away. We'll start with the classic, the greatsword. A big, slow, heavy-hitting weapon that you're able to charge up the hits for smashing high DPS per hit. But obviously this requires tough aiming and timing because you're standing there charging this heavy weapon. In Wilds, they basically encouraged you to achieve that easier with more options. The obvious option for this is the new focus mode that everyone's going to get. We each are able to hold the focus mode key and then do a new focus mode strike. In the case of greatsword, that means breaking a wound and just kind of doing a drag attack and then following that up with strong combos. Some weapons have more interesting focus mode attacks and benefits. With greatsword though, it allows you to aim your attacks. So you're able to aim with focus mode, charge up an attack, and even turn as far as say 180 degrees if you want to, allowing new players to find it much easier to land these charge attacks compared to just sort of feeling it out. And for veteran players, make those minor adjustments at the right time. Beyond that, other things they've done to improve the base of the weapon is things like adding offset rising slashes. Different slower heavy hitting weapons have these. If these attacks hit the monster right as it's about to hit you, you knock it offset, like a mini stagger. And in all cases, the weapons get a new follow-up attack, which could be very effective. Like in the case of the greatsword, you could get yourself to a nice true charge slash. On top of that, we have the new clash mechanics. Every weapon that can guard right as they're about to be hit to do a perfect guard, which might trigger these new clashes. These hold the monster in place and also allow for new follow-up attacks. In the case of greatsword though, this has meant that the guard has been improved. It comes out quicker and is generally a lot more reliable, so that's a really nice change for the weapon in general. At a bread and butter level though, you obviously have three parts to your true charge combo. Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, which is the thing you care about, the true charge slash front flip. An incredible change they've made is in regards to tackle. When you're mid-charging an attack, you can tackle instead to interrupt it. And if you tackle a monster that's about to hit you, you basically mitigate the damage a bit and continue into the next stage of the true charge combo. In Wilds, they're allowing you to maintain your previous charge level. So let's say you charged fully to level 3, then interrupted that with a perfect tackle. Now you're in part 2 of the combo, already fully charged to send that immediately. So we expect a lot of people to be draw slashing to get to part 2, then charging to level 3 in part 2 and interrupting that with a perfect tackle, bringing you to the true charge slash, but already fully charged to send it out really effectively and smoothly. So this base level stuff for a greatsword feels very exciting, even if it's one of the weapons that's got less new flashy moves like some of the other stuff like longsword as we're about to talk about. So longsword, this is a big deal. The base of longsword is to generate spirit gauge, reach the highest level, which is red, and unleash helm splitter. So what are you doing to do that? The classic roundhouse combo, foresight slash, which is basically a well-timed counter, or special sheath, the classic EI counter slash. You sheath the weapon and then right as you're about to be hit, you counter attack, punishing it, getting a level up, maybe even staggering it. The problem with that is that ever since say Iceborne, the weapon has become very counter centric. So in Wilds, you're going to see that there's a lot of changes to the base weapon, to the different combos, your movement during. They're trying to encourage you to not only counter every single attack. So Spirit Blade and that combo, you now are more mobile during it. To level up, you want to get to that roundhouse slash as quick as possible. You can now do something called Spirit Charge. By holding R2 in a PlayStation controller, you can throw out a Spirit Round Slash pretty quickly without doing the whole combo beforehand. And they've even enhanced Helm Splitter by adding a follow-up. So when you do Helm Splitter, not only can you choose to cancel that if you're going to miss now, which is insane, but let's say you land it, you follow that up with a Spirit Release Slash, dealing even more damage than the Helm Splitter, but for another spirit gauge level. So the idea here is that you're actually going to be going down and up the gauges a lot faster, a lot more often. So between Foresight Slash, Special Sheath EI counters, the new Spirit Charge, the new more mobile Spirit Blade, you can be able to level up in a lot of different ways, beyond just countering every single time. And hey, when you're there at max level Spirit Gauge in red, you have a new combo called the Crimson Slash combo that is actually even more effective than the Spirit Blade combo and quicker and shorter. So there could be argument for staying in red gauge a little bit longer than normal. Next up then, a quick talk about Sword and Shield. SNS is going to feel pretty familiar with a few subtle tweaks to my understanding. The SNS itself is still the classic beginner-friendly weapon that's not hard to enjoy. With low weight and a shield, you're able to move around the fight very effectively, and you're able to guard on demand. Great for triggering the new clashes mechanic, or just be agile while attacking, as always, because it lets you move around while you're sending out those combos, to mid-fight swap between slashing or blunt damage, and of course, use items even with the weapon drawn at the same time, which is a very forgiving mechanic. The new focus mode attack showcases that concept as well. You quickly attach yourself to the monster near the wound, and then you can choose to break the wound with either your blade or your shield. Attacking with the sword then leads to slash damage, so maybe you want to cut off the tail, that'd be great for that, while attacking with the shield leads to blunt damage, great for bonking the head and building up KO for a knockdown. This concept is then the core of the weapon. Various slashing combos and various shield slam combos based on where you're standing and what you're actually hitting. Subtle additions exist in Wilds then, like the new charge chop attack, which is simply activated mid-combo by holding triangle and circle at once. This is a leap attack which causes multiple instances of damage and can be smoothly worked in at the right time. For your various attack strings then, in this version you can go into any of the kind of 3 main attack routes after a round slash to start. This is instead of having to start with a chop or say with advancing slash. That can go into any of the follow-up combos, whatever you like. There's the fact that you can pull out your guard after any ground attack, essentially cancelling the next attack string into a guard, leading to the potential perfect guard to punish for something like Spinning Reaper or a charged chop or maybe a shield attack. So if you're on the ground swinging, you're always ready to go for that perfect guard, mitigating whatever the monster's going to do to you mid-combo. The classic big punish combo Perfect Rush is still there. It remains pretty similar to the Rise version. That might result in mixed thoughts for you. I've seen a lot of people talk about how they prefer the World version. But overall, I think this will be a familiar version of SNS with little quality of life improvements spread throughout the kit. There's new attacks for the damage type you're after, smoother transitions between guarding, or say when after you use the Spinning Reaper, there's a lot less of a delay after that. Therefore, I think it'll be a familiar and safe pick for learning Wilds, while still having a good skill ceiling with say perfect guard timing and proper consistent punishes. Next up then we have my main weapon, Dual Blades. The simple concept of Dual Blades is to always be attacking and evading every single time you're about to be hit. So the monster can never quite pin you down like you're an annoying buzzing fly always stabbing at it. To do this, you activate something called Demon Mode, consuming stamina while it's activated, but unlocking new, more effective attacks that build up the Demon Gauge. When you reach the full Demon Gauge though, you can deactivate Demon Mode to no longer drain stamina just existing and enjoy Archdemon Mode, still with enhanced attacks and movement and such, but yeah, no longer having to deal with a stamina drain. However, your attacks now cost the Demon Gauge, so it's a build and spend concept. However, they've changed a lot of this stuff. For example, the Blade Dance combo is longer and separated into parts, but does cost Demon Gauge to spend. So what have they done to basically enhance the base concept of Dual Blades in Wilds? Well, for one, they've added Demon Dodge. When you land a perfect evade while in Demon Mode, you do Demon Dodge instead, which is an attack and an evade at the same time. This buffs you for a little while, and so when you choose to evade during this Demon Dodge buff, you also attack. And you can press triangle during that evade to extend it with a kind of spiral spin, getting to the ideal location like a weak point to maximize DPS easier. It feels awesome. Then you have your big DPS combo when the monster is stunned, right? The Blade Dance combo. They've now added a third part to it that's longer. So instead of just pressing Blade Dance and being stuck in this long animation, it's 3 parts, allowing you to not continue it if you're in a bad spot, or go all the way and do a longer combo than before, dealing even more damage in exchange for Demon Gauge. But if you're in Archdemon mode, you can also use something new called Demon Flurry, the Demon Flurry combo. This is a shorter combo that can also move you in a 360 direction, whatever you want, helping you attack and evade at the same time. And what's amazing is you can interrupt a Blade Dance with Demon Flurry, allowing you to move and attack during one of your highest DPS combos, which would normally hold you in place. It's absolutely incredible. Outside of that awesomeness, we We do have our new focus mode attack, which brings back the Levi spin in an actual legitimate way, allowing you to kind of get iframes and evade attacks by leaping up into the air and spinning down the monster's spine. Alongside the usual off-ledge or slide versions of the Levi spin, they're still there. Overall then, this version of Dual Blades is grounded again compared to Rise and Sunbreak's more aerial style, and they've given us a load of tools to get around an attack and manage our combos without being stuck in them a lot better. Next up we have Hammer, which is still kind of, slow and heavy hitting bonks, but with a lot more mobility and options to it. The classic concept of the hammer is to build up KO by hitting the bonking attacks on the head of a monster consistently. Hammer is incredible for this and one of the best for building up KO, staggers and knockdowns overall. The simple bread and butter idea is to use your basic attacks and charge attacks to bonk the monster's head until it falls down and then go for longer combos like the full Big Bang combo. That is still a thing here, but they've made it easier to get to that point. For example, you can now use your grapple to evade during your charge attacks, getting you out of a bad spot, or you can use a new attack called the Mighty Charge. You begin to charge up, spinning the hammer, and unleash this ridiculous swing like a baseball player or something. As shown by Ryozo in some of the different gameplay, it can be done mid-combat. The monster does not need to be knocked down, and it's a great way to get a stagger. This is around your classic combos, the golf swing kind of uppercut, which now can be used as an offset attack. So if you time it right, as the monster's about to hit you and you hit them, you knock it off and can get more follow-ups because of that. So, well-timed counters, more evasive options with the grapple, new heavy-hitting attacks like the Mighty Charge, and the classic concept of charging, moving, standing combos, and the Big Bang whenever you can. It's Hammer, but better. Next then, we have a weapon that has changed a lot more, and that's Hunting Horn. Previously thought to be a more supportive weapon, especially in World and before, it has changed a lot in Rise to be a lot more offensive and aggressive. They gave it new attack tools, new offensive abilities, made playing those melodies also kind of echo out these attacks, resulting in a much more aggressive style for Hunting Horn and separating it from Hammer in a great way. However, they've lent harder into that for Wilds, and it's very exciting. In short, you'll play songs by doing different attacks, different melodies that when you perform at the end result in different buffs. This can buff yourself and allies with something as useful as like attack up. But in Wilds particularly, they've added something new called Echo Bubbles, which essentially echo out the melody effects that you're playing as long as you're near enough to them. This allows you to control huge areas of battle, echoing out those effects in lots of different places and ways. So as you use an attack and you play a note at the same time, this echoes out a little extra attack. Then the echo bubble echoes that out in a bigger area again. So you've got the physical attack, the actual note itself, and the echo effect all from one attack. And since you're doing like say 4-part combos, this is a lot of ticking damage. Just like the hammer, able to do a lot of blunt physical damage, building up KO and knocking the monsters down. This is enhanced with new attacks like a follow-up attack that's been added called the Overhead Smash. So if you like the Rise version of Hunting Horn, this is that, but better. But if you still like the idea of being a supportive, helpful hunter, you still are, you're still giving us those buffs, but you're being way more directly impactful and a lot more unique as playstyle compared to Hammer and being adjacent to that in the past. So I really like this. Next then we have Lance, which has some serious changes. One of the more simpler weapons, you're basically just poking at a target over and over and dashing between that to evade. You can also aim a little bit higher to reach harder to hit points, which is another selling point for the weapon. The other side of the weapon though, obviously, is the big shield, allowing you to guard or perfect guard as you're about to be hit, or use power guard to 360 defend yourself by consuming stamina and holding this cool position. After you do these things, you can pay back thrust or return thrust, charging up big hits in kind of a hit and then punish playstyle, alongside the fun of say dash attacks and running around like that. So it's high range and it's consistent DPS with ease of use because of that big shield you can rely on. In Wilds, they've taken that shield and made it part of the toolkit. So you're actually going to start hitting with the shield with new combos, building up KO damage and helping you knock down monsters way more effectively than this weapon ever could previously. Not only that, they've made the base attack smoother, allowing you to evade and attack at the same time significantly smoother than before. So essentially, Lance players, you've got the classic Lance, but with a new side to it, adding a lot of depth through shield attacks. And then the side that you're used to with Lance, it's simply smoother, with a lot of quality of life to it. Then you've got the perfect guarding and power guarding system still in place. So Lance is actually looking significantly better in Wilds, at least in my opinion. It's the first time I want to try the weapon since I played it in World. Moving forward, let's talk about the other Lance, the Gunlance. This weapon has a pretty hefty update in Wilds that has a lot of Gunlance mains. Very excited. But at its core, the Gunlance is a burstier, more explosive version of a lance, cramming a cannon into the thing. So while it does come with its own shield, it leans much more into the weapon than the shield itself. This results in longer recovery periods on average, and lesser mobility compared to the lance. But that's in exchange for the massive power behind it, and with the new quality of life updates that you're going to find in Wilds, that's really helped with that. For example, there's this kind of blast step that's great to move away from a monster or move to a better optimal position by shelling and stepping sideways at the same time. Or there's the new moving wide sweep, which can be used to shell mid-attack to unleash shells mid-swing rather than one then the other. Though we still have classic combinations like an overhead smash into the burst fire as still an effective option. Classic satisfying combos like the wide sweep into the wormstake cannon are there, lodging a wormstake right into the monster as before, but there is a move that kind of overshadows that now, a new one, and that's the wormstake full blast, which consumes all your current shells and your wormstake shot to go harder on that concept, since it uses the same ammo alongside those shells. But the results are worth it because you can follow it up with a multi extra hit, get a quick reload from that, and combo smoothly into wyvern fire, not once but twice if you want. Wyvern fire remains a potent tool to spend the wyvern gauge with though, charging a potent cannon blast on demand, which seems to charge for longer now for more explosive results. You can refill the gauge for that by attacking or with time passing, but you can have up to 2 stored at once. One other flashy move that we've got to mention though is the incredible drill attack using focus mode. Your focus mode attack is called Drake Auger, turning the weapon into a drill and then you use it to work your way towards a wound. This can be interrupted with a guard or sidestep though if you use it at the wrong time. But if you do make it to the wound, you can finish it with a Drake Auger finisher, bursting out a stake into that location, which explodes after a delay. Outside of some of the more spectacle stuff, there are improvements to say your shield options too, like how you can perfect guard to send out a counterattack, or while you're blocking, you can actively charge up a potent shell shot. So, the shield's still going to be a reliable defensive tool as well. But yeah, that's Gunlance, an explosive version of the lance, much more bursty with some serious spectacle behind it, and this Wilds version has a lot more to the basic combos and tools around that, alongside more spectacle attacks. Next up then, let's talk about Switch Axe. Switch Axe, if you're unaware then, is basically 2 weapons in one. It's the axe and the sword. You use axe attacks to power the axe up and ultimately get ready to go sword mode. Then when you go sword mode, you use sword attacks to amp up the sword's effect and unleash the amped state, leading to things like element or zero-sum discharges. In Wilds, they've taken the concept that we enjoyed in Rise and brought it back, allowing you to go toe-to-toe with monsters way more effectively due to the counterattack it had. That has been brought back in 2 different ways. In axe mode, that's going to be offset rising slashes. So, as you're about to be hit, you send this out, and as long as that hits the monster at the right time, it knocks it offset, which can then be followed up instantly with a heavy slam. Yes, the heavy slams that power your axe up into power axe mode. Or you could transform into your sword in that moment too. Now during sword, you have counter rising slash, which will counter the enemy successfully timed, leading into the heavenward flurry combo. So we have 2 new ways to go toe to toe with monsters, whether you're in axe or sword mode, which is really cool. We've kept that really fun style from Sunbreak in Wilds, but made it more grounded. Now in regards to say element discharge or zero-sum discharge, there's some cool stuff here with a new follow-up called the full release slash. When you're amped up and in sword mode, you can follow up say an element discharge with this full release, which is basically a horizontal spin and explosion, much like Longsword has a new follow-up after Helm Splitter. This may be a familiar attack to you, because in Rise, it was there too. But the problem there was you'd have to choose between the classic zero-sum discharge attach or this kind of full release slash. Now we get both without having to choose. It's just a follow-up to deal even more damage after a discharge. So generally, you've got the classic switch axe, building up axe attacks and power axe mode, swapping to sword and building up the amp state, and unleashing zero-sum discharges. But now, instead of having to rely on, say, evade extenders so much, we can use offset rising slash in axe mode, or the counter rising slash in sword mode, and deal even more burst when we do land those zero-sum discharges with the new full release slash. I am very excited to sink my teeth into this one. Next up for transforming weapons then, it's Charge Blade, which has always been cool, but it just gets cooler. This weapon is almost 3 in 1. It's a sword and shield, which also transforms into an axe. And in concept, you're generating these vials, which you store into the equipment. So using that, you power up the sword or the shield, and together, the axe. Ultimately unleashing this potent energy into things like the super amped discharge, emptying out all those stored vials via a big elemental explosion. Around that, you can charge and release the vials in sections instead though, using a mode referred to as the Savage Axe mode. And that has some key changes in Wilds, where they lean into that concept a bit more. This is because of the Power Axe mode, which consumes the vials at half the rate, letting you make use of the axe for longer. The awesome chainsaw style attacks come back a bit via the focus mode. The focus mode attack causes this double swing with the axe that presses the spinning saw into a wound and then you hold it there briefly. This then also triggers the power axe mode, so now you're able to hold the axe out longer and empty the vials slower. On top of that, the vial system's changed a bit too. They're now allowing you to overcharge the vials, increasing their potency beyond the normal. So let's say you use the vials to charge your shield, and because they're overcharged, the charged shield now lasts longer than normal. So that's awesome. But then the shield itself leans nicely into aggressive gameplay too. Say land a perfect guard, you'll be able to instantly follow that out with an SAED, or go for Savage mode as an instant transformation and release the vials in stages. A theme we're also seeing with the weapons at this point, say with Longsword and Switch Axe, is a new super move after the main one. But with Charge Blade it's similar but the other way around. The big hit here is the super amped element discharge, right? But now you combo into an SAED after landing a normal amped element discharge, like a small release followed into a big release. So, beyond the basic builder-spender concept that's all around SAED, this Wilds Charge Blade lets you choose. Will you unleash the massive element explosions, now back to back, or will you transform into the axe and smash and chainsaw your way through the monster? I like it as a nice mix of options, but I am interested to see if there's going to be a meta developing on this one, if one's going to be stronger than the other. Moving forward, we have the most controversial weapon of the Wilds update, and that is Insect Glaive. The Insect Glaive is a glaive that fights hand in hand with a kinsect. That little ally helps you gather these temporary buffs that enhance your output, unlocking new attacks. The goal is to collect each type of the monster essence, and that enhances your weapon actions. The attacks you use with the glaive are fast and agile, commonly tied to that aerial nature of the weapon. The most aerial weapon of them all, until Wilds where it's less so. Previously, you used the weapon to bounce up into the air and then dash and use a sort of spinning helicopter combo through the monster, bounce back up and eventually choose to slam down. These days, the weapon reminds me more of a dragoon, which is much less floaty, but more vertical, slamming up and down a lot faster. In regards to important quality of life though, using the focus mode, you're able to attack and gather essence at the same time now by shooting the kinsect during those attacks. This means you can attack while drawing back the kinsect at the same time, so sending it out, bringing it back, while fighting yourself. In general, the kinsect looks to work better directly with your attacks in unison then, rather than doing one or the other. They're calling this concept the kinsect combo, and I think it's great. Not only that, but the kinsect can now hold up to 2 extracts rather than 1 at a time, making it even easier to reach that full buff state, especially with the ability to aim at a monster and see what extract you're going to get if you hit it beforehand. Or how when you hit a wound with a focus strike, you just get all 3 buffs kind of instantly. For the glaive side of things though, there are a few new moves. There's this pretty funny one where you attach to the monster and sort of spin around the glaive. It's very silly in concept. Or the incredible new rising spiral slash. You can charge this and then leap up into the air with your kinsect and then use the new descending slash to end it effectively. That attack ends the enhanced state when you use it, but it also collects multiple extracts whenever your kinsect is launched, so you can kind of recover instantly. In general then, the Wilds Insect Glaive appears to be greatly improved in regards of UI, the kinsect and how it functions with the hunter, and yeah, some new glaive attacks. The downside is the lack of aerial gameplay. The aerial bounces to, helicopter around. What's funny is that was never really the best way to get high output with this weapon, but it was always a fun and popular thing that was really unique to this weapon. Losing it then has been very derisive for the IG community. So we're definitely looking forward to the beta to see how things have really shaped up for this weapon. For the next weapon then, it's now time to talk ranged weapons, starting with the light bowgun. The light bowgun works as a mobile ranged option, with a very forgiving but fun playstyle. I see it as a great beginner weapon, but it can be played extremely effectively. The concept is simple though, you aim and fire at an effective range, which is close to medium. You have your unique dodge dash to help you evade and even slide and reposition, while making use of various ammo types to be, the most effective gunner you can be. Whether that's piercing ammo, spread, firing sticky shots, but being agile and evasive and maintaining constant DPS, that's the goal of this more agile and quick weapon. So you're aiming for the weak points, that's the key bit of the gameplay. Naturally, since you're already aiming, the focus mode concept's a bit different for bowguns. You just get a new focus mode strike and that's really it. In Wilds, the weapon has more updates to separate it from the heavy bowgun a bit though, leaning more into mobility, and they both get a new gauge. With the light bowgun, that's called the rapid fire mode. This gauge, when consumed, will fire off multiple shots of different types of ammo, using this new drum mag attachment for those burst fire purposes. To build that gauge up, time passes or just land attacks. It still has the classic stuff like the special move of wyvern blast, a special ammo where you place bombs, which will be triggered when the monster touches them or you fire through them or into them. The focus mode attack though is called the chaser shot, which fires these potent, powerful shots that have huge stagger potential, maybe even leading to staggers just like that if you hit a wound. Those also build up the rapid fire gauge super quickly, so it can be a great way to maximize that with that in mind. So yeah, a new light bow gun just keeps you mobile, wants you to fire in bursts between this new multi-shot style attacks using the gauge, and then those explosive and staggering shots alongside classic different ammo type management. On the other hand, we have the heavy bowgun, which is much slower and heavier than the light version. It comes with much more power and impact behind each shot though, so the cost of mobility comes with power, making it a pretty popular choice. As a bowgun though, you want to play again at the right distance to maintain the highest damage, which is relatively close to the monster. Due to the slower nature, you are able to make use of different types of guarding, and in Wilds it's kind of like a built-in shield with an auto guard feature against some of the attacks in front of you when you do certain actions. This goes hand in hand with the various attachments, but as a bowgun, you'll also be managing different ammo types, just like the light bowgun, with a couple options only for the heavier version. Now just like Wild's light bowgun, the heavy bowgun does get a new gauge, but it works differently. This one's called ignition mode, which fires special ammo that consumes this gauge. This fires a continuous stream of fast shots for this normally slower weapon. The gauge also builds up over time, all by dealing damage. But a big one here is the new wyvern counter ignition. By holding triangle, you can send out a close range attack that's kind of a big explosion. But the thing is, this can offset. So if you land that right as the monster's about to hit you, you stagger it, leaving it exposed. It's really cool that a ranged weapon gets an offset. And on top of that, the heavy bowgun does have that kind of shield effect, right? Which means you're able to trigger clashes with this weapon as well, which is super cool. So you go very toe-to-toe with monsters with this weapon, around the new rapid fire potential, sticky explosions, and the high impact hits. Overall, I think the offset attack potential is going to feel really good, a kind of skill check rewarding proper use, while the gauge system lends itself better to new players with a forgiving machine gun style fire rate. Managing the right ammo for the right moment, that's always going to be key with a bowgun. But yeah, now making use of the more consistent shield options when you're pressured, I'm sure that's going to help a lot. Lastly, that brings us to bow, which is one of the winners for Wilds in my opinion. The bow is a simple mid to close range weapon that uses a bunch of different arrow based attacks. Just as before, you'll be charging by aiming and charging up levels, and the more charge you have, the harder you hit. But there's ways to get charge without having to stand there aiming, like charging sidesteps. The bow's unique evade. Now in Wilds, you can follow that up with a new attack, flying swallow shot. A little leap and then like 5 arrows shot in one go. But that charging sidestep has a new effect. If you evade right as you're about to be hit, you'll do a discerning dodge, which fills up your new gauge. That's right, bow has a new gauge called the trick arrow gauge. You build it up by dealing damage or doing these perfect evades. Then you spend it on generating coatings or tracer arrows. Coatings have changed then. Instead of being something you craft and have a set amount of, you have an infinite supply in smaller number when you generate them. So by spending one notch on the trick arrow gauge to generate a coating, you can get 8 arrows that are coated. Be that power coating, maybe you're doing close range, or poison or other status. Alternative to that are the tracer arrows, which allow you to place a tracer in the target and then all arrows home into that location, building up damage and exploding the tracer at the end. This works for any arrow, even, yes, dragon piercer, allowing you to really focus weak points much more effectively with the bow, which is great. You still have the classic combos of quick shot, power volley, and arc shot is still going to be in the game, but it's way better than it was in Rise. Now it applies these arrows that can be shot and exploded. And that comes into play with your new focus mode. When you focus mode, you get this lock-in system. Wounds that exist, you can pop with this. Or if you've applied a bunch of arc shot arrows, the explosive ones, it'll home in on those and blow those up too. And then if you follow up this with a combo of a dragon piercer, it comes out way faster. So they brought dragon piercer into your normal gameplay by giving it a faster animation when used in combo. So it's pretty incredible. And when you use that perfect evade on the charging sidestep, the discerning dodge, you actually generate stamina. So the more aggressive you are, the closer you are, the more perfect you play, the more you're going to be rewarded with this new bow, ultimately raising its skill ceiling massively in this version. And that's why I think it's one of the winners for the game and the updates for the weapons, and probably will be very popular in this version. But there you have it. That's a kind of overview of all the weapons. I hope this overview could give you an idea of what kind of weapons you're going to try in the beta, but I definitely recommend you experiment as much as you want. If you guys have anything you'd like to add for any of the weapons today though, any advice for people interested in them, let us know in the comments. But we'll see you in the beta for lots of coverage. For now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching, see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.